Today, we take you inside a congressional hearing where one lawmaker uncovers shocking internal FBI documents. Secrets, misleading statistics, and hidden directives come to light all under the watchful eyes of the cameras. Watch closely, because what happens next changes everything. The morning light barely filtered through the blinds of the congressional hearing room. But inside, the tension was already palpable. Most observers assumed this would be just another routine session, a predictable exchange between elected officials and career bureaucrats. FBI Director Patel walked in confident, briefcase in hand, prepared to provide carefully rehearsed updates on recent law enforcement operations. Cameras were rolling, but he believed that today, as always, the spotlight would pass over the intricate details he wished remained unseen. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, however, had other plans. Sitting at the front of the committee table, she scanned her documents calmly. Papers thick with charts, emails, and internal communications. To anyone looking in, she appeared composed, almost casual. Yet beneath that calm exterior was meticulous preparation. She knew exactly how to reveal discrepancies that would make headlines and demand accountability. Patel began his opening remarks with measured authority, highlighting recent FBI initiatives, arrests, and investigative outcomes. He spoke of operational successes, the hard work of field agents, and the department's commitment to transparency. The usual nods, the polite scribbling of notes, and the subtle glances toward the cameras gave him a sense of security. This was the stage he had rehearsed for countless times. Jasmine adjusted her microphone slightly, her eyes meeting Patel's. She didn't rush or shout. She didn't need theatrics. Her first question was deliberate, calm, yet charged with intent. Director Patel, can you confirm the total number of arrests and case closures attributed to your leadership in the last 6 months? Patel's answer was steady, confident. Congresswoman, as per our official records, the Bureau has closed over 1,200 cases and secured 450 arrests across multiple federal operations, reflecting the dedication and professionalism of our agents. A few committee members nodded approvingly, but Jasmine's eyes didn't shift. She held up a folder and said, almost conversationally, I have internal documents suggesting these figures may not reflect the actual activity under your tenure. The room quieted immediately. Cameras zoomed in on Patel. He straightened, lips pressing together subtly, realizing that Jasmine had a file he hadn't expected to be revealed. I'm not sure what documents you're referencing, he replied carefully. Attempting to maintain composure, Jasmine smiled faintly, the kind of smile that signals the start of a revelation. These documents, marked as confidential, include internal emails and reports that outline adjustments made to arrest numbers and case closures, sometimes from prior administrations yet presented as current successes. The murmurs in the room grew. Staffers exchanged glances, reporters jotted rapidly, and the cameras captured every flicker of Patel's expression. He had entered this hearing expecting routine oversight, not exposure. Patel tried to recover, emphasizing the Bureau's dedication and claiming the numbers reflected legitimate law enforcement activity. But Jasmine didn't waver. She began presenting evidence, email by email, internal memo by internal memo. One by one, it became evident that Patel had instructed staff to enhance numbers and to be creative with statistics for congressional presentations, even without overt accusation. The weight of the evidence was clear. Patel's confidence faltered. His rehearsed talking points, meant to reassure, now appeared hollow. Each document Jasmine revealed brought clarity to a narrative that had until now been obscured. Systematic manipulation of crime statistics. Emily Carter, a cybersecurity analyst observing from the public gallery, scribbled notes rapidly. She wasn't a politician. She wasn't aligned with any side. But even she felt the gravity of the moment, here, in real time. A public servant was being held accountable for decisions that affected transparency, trust, and the very perception of law enforcement integrity. Tedious minutia numbers, memos, percentages might normally feel dry. Yet in this room, the story behind each figure was profoundly human. Agents pressured to inflate data, whistleblowers uneasy but silenced, and a director relying on appearances rather than honesty. Jasmine's line of questioning didn't rely on theatrics. She framed her points logically, sequentially, and with an emotional intelligence that underscored the seriousness of what was being discussed. She highlighted 60% of claimed arrests were from the previous administration. The Charlie Kirk case had been solved by local authorities, not the FBI. Internal emails referred to Congress as political theater. Systematic efforts to manipulate case files were documented. Patel's initial calm began to crack. His gaze flicked to the cameras. He thought he had control. He thought some matters were off the record. But every reaction was captured, every pause noted. In that quiet tension, it became clear. Jasmine Crockett wasn't trying to humiliate him for personal gain. She was revealing the truth of a system where numbers mattered more than honesty, where perception had overridden reality. The session was only beginning. For those watching live, the unfolding narrative promised a confrontation that was neither theatrical nor explosive. It was precise, measured, and damning in its clarity. The room waited, suspended between expectation and revelation, as Jasmine prepared to ask the next question, one that could change the trajectory of the hearing entirely. And for Patel, the realization settled slowly, like a weight pressing down. This hearing was no longer routine. Everything he thought secure was about to be challenged. The tension in the hearing room thickened. Patel sat rigidly, glancing occasionally at his aides, who avoided eye contact with the committee members. He could feel the weight of every camera lens and every note-taking journalist on him. What he had believed to be a routine session was evolving into a public reckoning. Jasmine Crockett remained calm, her demeanor professional yet unyielding. She didn't shout or dramatize. She let the documents speak for themselves. Each piece of evidence was laid out methodically, internal emails, case files, and reports, all pointing toward the same uncomfortable truth. The FBI's statistical claims under Patel's leadership were inflated, and in some cases misrepresented entirely. Ted Gregory, another committee member, leaned forward, curiosity in his eyes. "Congresswoman Crockett," he asked, "are you suggesting that the FBI intentionally misled Congress about arrests and case closures?" Jasmine responded without hesitation. "Based on the documentation in front of you, the evidence strongly indicates that staff were instructed to modify case numbers and present results in a way that did not accurately reflect reality. It wasn't merely an error, it was a pattern." Patel attempted to maintain composure, leaning into rehearsed explanations about standard reporting methods and interdepartmental adjustments. But every explanation was undercut by the documents Jasmine produced. Emails from his own team explicitly mentioned directives to enhance numbers and be creative with statistics for congressional testimony. The murmurs in the room grew louder, but Jasmine didn't flinch. Instead, she pivoted to humanizing the impact of these actions. "Behind each number are real cases," she said. "Real communities. Misrepresenting statistics doesn't just mislead policymakers, it undermines public trust and can jeopardize resource allocation for future investigations." Emily Carter, observing from the gallery, scribbled notes feverishly. She wasn't an insider, but she understood the broader implications. Public trust in institutions was fragile, and when figures were manipulated even with good intentions, the consequences could ripple far beyond Washington. As the questioning continued, Crockett highlighted the Charlie Kirk case. She explained how the FBI had claimed responsibility for its resolution. Yet records and local law enforcement confirmed that the case was handled entirely by city police. Patel's expression stiffened as the committee's attention intensified. Director Patel. Jasmine pressed, "Can you clarify why this case was presented as an FBI success?" Patel hesitated, then spoke carefully. The Bureau was involved in monitoring aspects of the investigation, ensuring interagency communication. Jasmine interrupted gently. While coordination may have occurred, the resolution itself was achieved by local authorities. Yet it was listed as an FBI closure in official reports. Why? The question hung in the air. Even Patel's aides looked uneasy. For the first time, the confidence that Patel had carried into the room faltered. He realized that rehearsed talking points and careful phrasing would no longer suffice. Jasmine didn't pause. She shifted to another set of documents, internal emails from Patel, referring to Congress as political theater. These messages, meant for internal circulation, revealed a dismissive attitude toward accountability. Patel's gaze flicked nervously toward the cameras. He thought some matters were confidential. He thought he could navigate this without real consequence. But with Jasmine presenting evidence sequentially, methodically, there was no room to maneuver. The room felt charged not with anger or confrontation, but with revelation. The clarity of the documents contrasted sharply with the director's prepared statements. It wasn't personal. It was systematic. Emily reflected on the implications. The documents suggested more than inflated numbers. They pointed to structural issues. Agents pressured to falsify case files, systematic manipulation of crime statistics, and leadership that prioritized optics over truth. Ted Gregory leaned in again. "This is alarming," he said quietly, "if the information is accurate. The Bureau's credibility is at stake." Jasmine nodded. "Exactly. Accuracy and accountability must come first. Without them, the system becomes performative rather than functional." Patel opened his mouth to respond, but paused. The weight of what was being revealed was undeniable. Every directive he had issued under scrutiny now carried public implications. He could not simply reframe the narrative with rehearsed talking points. The hearing room seemed to shrink, the air thick with anticipation. Every observer, staffers, committee members, journalists, even gallery attendees felt that the session had crossed from ordinary Silinor's oversight into something historic. Jasmine's strategy was clear, not to embarrass Patel personally, but to illustrate a broader truth about institutional accountability. The documents spoke volumes, and she allowed them to do so. Patel's demeanor shifted. The composed assurance that had carried him through previous hearings gave way to guarded silence. He realized that any attempt to deflect would only magnify the exposure. Emily felt a mixture of apprehension and respect. Watching the unfolding events, she recognized the courage it took for Crockett to reveal these internal documents. Knowing that the session was being broadcast live, the conversation wasn't merely political theater, was a study in integrity, ethics, and the consequences of leadership choices. By the end of Part 2, the room had transformed. What began as a routine hearing had become a live exposure of systematic misrepresentation, setting the stage for Patel's credibility to be questioned in ways that would resonate far beyond the Capitol and Jasmine Crockett. She remained calm, composed, and unwavering, signaling that the hearing had only just begun, that the truth, once revealed, was unstoppable. The tension in the hearing room had reached a critical point. Patel's usual confidence had given way to careful, measured responses, but every word now seemed to be weighed against the evidence Jasmine Crockett was presenting. The documents she revealed didn't just contradict his statements, they painted a pattern of systematic misrepresentation, something far more serious than mere human error. Crockett leaned forward, calm and precise. "Director Patel," she said, "the internal emails instructing staff to enhance numbers. and be creative with statistics are dated and signed under your supervision. Can you explain why Congress was presented with figures that were not fully accurate? Patel's lips pressed together. He opened his mouth, then closed it, as though carefully considering his words. "Congresswoman," he began, voice steady but tinged with tension. "Our reports are compiled from multiple sources and departments. Adjustments are sometimes necessary to reconcile data discrepancies. It is never our intention to mislead." Jasmine didn't interrupt, but held the document slightly higher, letting the room sense the contradiction. "Director," she continued, "the memos explicitly direct agents to modify and present data creatively, even when no reconciliation is needed. This is not about minor discrepancies. This is a deliberate approach to statistics for appearances." The committee shifted in their seats. Some members glanced at each other, recognizing the gravity. Reporters' fingers flew across keyboards, capturing each moment for live broadcasts. Cameras focused tightly on Patel, documenting his subtle reaction, eyes flicking, jaw tightening while Jasmine remained poised. Emily Carter, observing quietly, felt the weight of what was unfolding. She wasn't a politician, but she understood institutional accountability. The documents weren't abstract. They represented the choices of real people in positions of power. Decisions that could impact public trust and policy. Patel took a deep breath. "Congresswoman," he said finally, "I acknowledge that some internal communications may have been misinterpreted. But the Bureau's intention has always been to provide Congress with the most comprehensive overview of our operations." Crockett's response was firm, yet composed. "Director, intention alone does not negate impact. Misleading Congress, whether intentional or not, undermines oversight and public confidence. The American people deserve accuracy, transparency, and accountability." Patel's aides exchanged uneasy glances. He realized that his rehearsed responses were insufficient. This hearing wasn't about defending general operations anymore. It was about personal accountability and public transparency. The hearing's tone remained formal, but the undercurrent was electric. Every revelation seemed to magnify the credibility gap between Patel's statements and the documented evidence. Crockett moved to another set of files, highlighting internal FBI assessments showing that some of the reported arrests attributed to his leadership were in fact carried out by local law enforcement or previous administrations. "Director Patel," Jasmine asked, her voice steady, "how can Congress and the public trust future reports if past figures were manipulated?" The question was direct, unavoidable. Patel hesitated, visibly calculating his next words. "Congresswoman, we are committed to reviewing our reporting methods and ensuring future accuracy," he said. The phrasing was careful, almost legalistic. But it acknowledged the problem without fully admitting wrongdoing. Emily Carter noted how this exchange illustrated a broader societal challenge. Systems designed for accountability can be undermined when leaders prioritize appearances over truth. She reflected on real-world implications, funding decisions, public confidence, and even policy implementation. The ripple effect of manipulated data could be substantial. Jasmine didn't stop. She highlighted the internal culture revealed in the emails, agents being pressured to falsify case files, memos referring to congressional hearings as political theater, and repeated emphasis on inflating numbers to project success. It wasn't just statistics, it was the manipulation of perception, intended to craft a narrative for policymakers and the public alike. Patel's composure wavered slightly. His eyes flicked toward the cameras. He had believed certain aspects of his work would remain shielded, that appearances could be maintained. Now, under Crockett's methodical questioning, everything was public and undeniable. The gallery watched in tense silence. Observers like Emily understood the significance. This was not merely a political confrontation, but a profound exploration of institutional integrity and leadership responsibility. Mistakes, exaggerations, An intentional misrepresentation carried consequences far beyond the walls of the Capitol. Jasmine pressed on, presenting a timeline showing how the FBI had reported successes month by month. Each month's report contradicted internal evidence. "Director Patel," she said, "the pattern is clear. These aren't isolated incidents, they are systemic. How do you justify this to Congress and to the public?" For the first time, Patel leaned back, exhaling slowly. He realized that every carefully crafted talking point had failed. The hearing was no longer about defending numbers, was about confronting the truth. Ted Gregory, observing closely, whispered to a colleague, "This is unprecedented. She's presenting a full exposure. Not just questioning, it's an institutional reckoning." Emily felt a sense of anticipation mixed with awe. Watching the live exchange, she realized that Jasmine Crockett wasn't performing for political gain. She was demonstrating the power of diligence, preparation, and integrity. By the end of Part 3, Patel's initial confidence had eroded. The evidence was undeniable, the narrative compelling, and the public watching at home would soon grasp the magnitude of what had been revealed. Crockett had turned what Patel believed would be a routine session into a historic examination of accountability, leadership, and the consequences of manipulation. The stage was set for the final confrontation, the moment when the full impact of these revelations would force a reckoning, both personal and institutional, and leave a lasting mark on congressional oversight. The room felt heavier than before. Patel's usual composure had slipped entirely. He now understood that this hearing was more than scrutiny, was a public examination of his leadership, the integrity of the FBI, and the trust placed in institutions by the American people. Jasmine Crockett leaned forward slightly, her tone calm but unwavering. "Director Patel," she began, "we've reviewed multiple internal documents showing direct instructions to modify and embellish statistics, emails referring to congressional oversight as political theater, and cases claimed as FBI successes that were resolved elsewhere. How do you respond under oath?" Patel swallowed. The cameras captured the slight tension in his jaw, the subtle twitch of his hands. He realized that any misstep could be instantly broadcasted and analyzed across media platforms. He was acutely aware that the story wasn't just being told inside the hearing room. It was reaching millions of Americans in real time. "I acknowledge that there have been discrepancies," Patel admitted, his voice measured. "Our reporting methods are under review to ensure future accuracy. We are committed to maintaining transparency with Congress and the public." Jasmine didn't interrupt. She allowed the weight of her evidence to settle in the room, letting the silence speak volumes. Committee members glanced at each other. Reporters' fingers flew over keyboards, and gallery observers absorbed the scene with tense anticipation. Emily Carter, watching intently, felt a shift in the atmosphere. The hearing had transformed from a formal procedure into a display of accountability and truth. Every revelation from the documents, every carefully crafted question, highlighted the gap between perception and reality, intent and consequence. Jasmine moved to a final set of evidence. Emails and memos showing how agents were pressured to report inflated numbers, and internal communications emphasizing appearances over factual reporting. "Director Patel," she said quietly but firmly, "these actions affect not just policy, but public trust and the credibility of the entire institution. Can you assure this body that reforms will be immediate and comprehensive?" Patel took a deep breath. He understood that words alone would not suffice. The public and congressional oversight bodies demanded action, not excuses. "Yes, Congresswoman," he said, "reforms will be implemented. And I will personally oversee steps to ensure accountability and transparency." The room remained silent for a moment, acknowledging the gravity of the admission. For Patel, the implications were enormous. Resignation discussions, internal investigations, and a complete restructuring of reporting procedures were inevitable. Jasmine then addressed the broader implications. This isn't only about one person's decisions. It's about creating a culture of honesty and responsibility within institutions that affect millions of Americans. When numbers are manipulated or perception is prioritized over fact, the consequences ripple far beyond Washington. Emily reflected on her own life and community. The story unfolding before her eyes wasn't just political drama, it was a lesson in integrity, diligence, and the importance of accountability. The choices of leaders, the culture of organizations, and the honesty of reporting could directly influence society's trust in governance. Patel exhaled, a mixture of resignation and understanding crossing his face. He realized that the hearing had exposed not only actions, but also attitudes, a reflection of leadership, culture, and the responsibilities of those in power. Committee members leaned back, absorbing the exchange. The significance was clear. This hearing had gone beyond politics. It was a case study in ethics, transparency, and the consequences of manipulating public perception. Emily sensed a powerful message emerging. True accountability doesn't come from rehearsed statements or rehearsed appearances. It comes from confronting the truth, facing the evidence, and committing to meaningful reform. Jasmine concluded the questioning with a final, measured statement. Director Patel, the public, Congress, and history will remember the choices made here today. I urge that accountability not end with this hearing, but continue through concrete reforms and genuine transparency. The cameras continue to roll, capturing the quiet but undeniable impact of the session. Patel's resignation, ongoing investigations, and the appointment of special prosecutors were already inevitable, and the implications would shape the Bureau and congressional oversight for years to come. For Emily and those observing, the hearing had become a lesson far beyond law enforcement statistics. It was a study in courage, diligence, and the weight of responsibility that comes with leadership. As the session concluded, the room emptied slowly. The dramatic tension had faded, replaced by reflection and understanding. Jasmine Crockett had succeeded in her mission, not through confrontation, but through preparation, clarity, and unwavering commitment to truth. For Patel, the consequences were immediate: resignation, investigations, and a legacy complicated by decisions now fully exposed. But for the public and observers like Emily, the hearing became a historic example of accountability, diligence, and the power of transparency. And though the microphones were turned off and the cameras stopped rolling, the conversation would continue far beyond the Capitol. A debate about trust, ethics, and the responsibilities of those in power that every citizen could understand and reflect upon. The story was over, but its lessons remained. Integrity matters. Accountability cannot be optional. And the truth has the power to reshape institutions one courageous disclosure at a time.